The tension was unbearable. Earth's communication systems, once quiet for years, were now alive with chaos. A disturbing transmission had just been intercepted, a signal that would forever change the fate of humanity. The message was coming from deep space, from a place no human could have ever imagined. The Galactic Council had just made a grave mistake. They had captured a human dog, a symbol of Earth's purity and innocence, and were using it to make a statement. This was no ordinary dog. It was a reminder of the love and loyalty humanity had for all creatures, big and small. But to the Council, it was nothing more than a tool for punishment. The Council had decided that humans were weak, and they would pay the price for their interstellar defiance. The message was clear: disobey us again, and this will be your fate. The transmission showed the dog in chains, tortured under bright, unforgiving lights. Its whimpers echoed in the background as the Galactic Council's officials laughed and mocked Earth's helplessness. The dog's body was bruised and broken, but its eyes were full of defiance. On Earth, an entire world watched. The image flickered on screens across every major city, broadcasted across underground bases, and through every communication channel that remained open. The people of Earth stared in disbelief. Anger surged through their veins, a wave of rage and sorrow that could not be contained. How dare the Galactic Council do this? How dare they mock humanity in such a way? The cameras zoomed in on the human faces watching the broadcast. From the youth to the elderly, from soldiers to scientists, there was a unified sense of anger. But beneath the rage, there was a silent understanding. This was no ordinary humiliation. This was a declaration of war. The Council had underestimated humanity for too long. But even in the face of such brutality, the humans didn't retaliate immediately. They knew something the Galactic Council didn't. Humanity had a power that had been hidden away for centuries, a power that could turn the tide of any battle. It was the secret that had been passed down through generations, a legacy that had remained dormant, waiting for the right moment to rise. That moment had arrived. Among the many faces watching the transmission was a young human commander. He stood in the shadows, his jaw clenched, his fists tightening. As he watched the torture unfold, a fire ignited in his heart. It wasn't just the pain of the dog that hurt him. It was the insult, the humiliation. The Council had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. He vowed that the Galactic Council would pay for this atrocity, but he knew it would take more than just military force. It would require something much greater, something ancient, something that could only be unleashed when humanity's back was against the wall. The commander's eyes narrowed. He knew the time had come. Time to awaken what had been buried beneath the earth for centuries. The fleet that once ruled the stars. It wasn't just a fleet of ships. It was humanity's secret weapon, an ancient relic from a time when humans were not the underdogs, but the dominant force in the galaxy. They had once been feared. They had once been powerful. But over time, their enemies had pushed them into the shadows, and their fleets were lost to history. The commander turned and rushed toward a hidden control room deep underground, where Earth's highest military officials had gathered. In this room, the fate of the galaxy and the fate of humanity would be decided. The young commander pushed through the doors, his heart racing. The room fell silent as everyone turned to face him. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. "We've watched this long enough." The commander spoke, his voice low but filled with fury. "The Galactic Council has made a grave mistake. They tortured one of our own. Now it's time for us to show them that they are not the ones who hold the power. We have something they will never understand. We have the legacy of the stars." The officials in the room exchanged uneasy glances. The fleet. It was more than just a dream. It was real. But it had been dormant for centuries, hidden beneath the Earth's surface, waiting for the right moment. The time had come. They had all heard the stories. The fleet, built long ago by Earth's greatest minds, was said to be capable of wiping out entire civilizations. But its existence had been kept a secret, buried deep within Earth's core, and only a few knew how to unlock its power. The fleet wasn't just a collection of ships. It was an ancient force, equipped with cloaking devices, advanced AI, and unimaginable weaponry. It was humanity's last hope. The commander turned to the lead scientist, who had spent his life studying the fleet's schematics. Activated. Now, the scientist hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He understood the gravity of the situation. He punched in the sequence of codes, and the room began to shake. The Earth's core hummed with energy as the ancient fleet stirred to life. The massive ships, long forgotten and hidden from the eyes of the galaxy, slowly began to emerge from their dormant state. Outside, in the dark sky above Earth, the first ships began to rise. Their enormous forms, cloaked in advanced technology, shimmered as they broke through the atmosphere. It was a sight unlike any other, an ancient fleet of unimaginable power, ready to take on the Galactic Council and reclaim humanity's place in the galaxy. The commander stood at the front of the control room, his eyes fixed on the rising ships, his heart beat with anticipation. This was just the beginning. The Council would never know what hit them. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in a vast, hidden facility built during the height of humanity's power, a discovery was being made that could change the fate of the galaxy. For centuries, the world had lived in relative peace, unaware of the ancient secrets buried beneath their feet. But now, as the Galactic Council's cruelty against humanity's innocent had reached its peak, humanity's last hope was being awakened. The facility buzzed with activity. Scientists and military leaders crowded around high-tech monitors, their eyes glued to the readouts that flickered on the screens in front of them. The air was thick with anticipation, the pressure building with every passing second. The young commander, who had vowed vengeance for the tortured dog, paced nervously in front of the gathered leaders. His mind raced with thoughts of what was to come. If this worked, Earth might stand a chance against the Galactic Council. "Is it ready?" the commander asked, his voice low but commanding, filled with the weight of responsibility. The lead scientist, a man in his 50s with gray hair and intense eyes, looked up from his console. "It's close. The fleet's systems are ancient, but the technology is still sound. It's a race against time, Commander. The Council is tightening their grip on the colonies. If we don't act now, we may lose everything." The young commander nodded, his jaw clenched. Every second counted. He turned to look at the massive holographic display in front of him. The flickering lights on the screen began to align, and what was once a dormant fleet of ancient warships slowly began to appear. These ships had been hidden for centuries, buried deep within the Earth's core by the ancient leaders who had once ruled the stars. They had been waiting for a time like this, a time when humanity would be forced to rise and fight for its survival. The ships were massive, their shapes unlike anything the modern world had ever seen. These were not the small, sleek warships of the modern era. They were colossal, each one big enough to crush entire colonies with a single blow. The ships had been designed for an era when humanity had commanded the galaxy, their AI systems powered by technology so advanced that even the greatest minds of today couldn't fully comprehend its capabilities. As the scientists worked feverishly, the systems began to hum. First, it was faint, a small flicker of energy. Then, a surge. The enormous warships, long forgotten and hidden beneath layers of Earth's crust, started to come to life. Their energy cores glowed faintly at first, then grew brighter, until they lit up the underground base like beacons of hope in the darkest of nights. The sound of machines whirring to life echoed through the underground chambers. The massive warship's cloaking devices flickered as they began to shimmer, revealing their vast, intimidating forms. The sheer size of these ships was overwhelming. It was as if the Earth itself was awakening to fight back. The technology embedded in the ships was unlike anything in the universe. Their weapons systems were powerful, capable of obliterating entire fleets. Their advanced AI would be able to outthink any opponent, anticipating every move before it even happened. As the commander stood before the fleet, his heart pounded with a mixture of awe and fear. This was humanity's last chance. These ships, buried for so long, held the key to their survival. But would it be enough? The Galactic Council was far more powerful than anything humanity had ever faced before. The Council's ships were sleek, fast, and armed with the latest technology. But what they didn't have was the raw power of the ancient fleet. They didn't have the unyielding spirit of humanity. The young commander took a deep breath, his face hardening with determination. This was it. There was no turning back now. The fleet was ready. But so was humanity. He turned to his officers who had been quietly preparing for battle, their faces reflecting the gravity of the situation. There was no need for words. They all knew what was at stake. The Council had humiliated them, tortured one of their own, and pushed them to the edge. It was time to rise up. It was time to fight back. "Prepare the fleet," the commander said, his voice steady and sure. "We leave at dawn." The room went silent, except for the hum of the ship's systems. The energy in the room was electric, and for the first time in a long while, the humans felt something they hadn't felt in years: hope. It was a feeling that had been buried under the weight of years of oppression and defeat. But now, with the fleet at their disposal, the tables had turned. The Galactic Council would soon learn that humanity was not as weak as they had thought. They were far from it. The young commander turned his gaze to the massive ships, each one a symbol of humanity's strength and resilience. He could feel the weight of the past and the future on his shoulders. The ancient fleet had been waiting for this moment, for humanity to rise up once again and take its place among the stars. But it wasn't just the ships that made the commander feel the way he did. It was the soldiers, the scientists, and every human who had suffered under the Council's oppressive rule. Their faces flashed before his eyes, their anger and their pain fueling his resolve. He wasn't just fighting for victory. He was fighting for redemption, for justice, for the very soul of humanity. As the last of the systems powered up, the commander knew that Earth was no longer alone. They had the fleet, the weapons, and the will to fight, and they would use everything in their power to tear down the Galactic Council's reign of terror. He stood tall, his heart swelling with pride as the ancient fleet rumbled to life, ready to launch. The battle was about to begin. The night was silent, a deep, vast silence that blanketed space as the enormous fleet of Earth's ancient warships silently drifted through the cosmos. They were cloaked, invisible to the eyes of any enemy or spy. The fleet, once lost and forgotten, now emerged as the last hope for humanity. The time had come to launch the first strike against the Galactic Council, the tyrannical force that had tormented Earth for far too long. Humanity was ready for war. In the darkened command center of the lead ship, the young commander stood tall, his eyes locked onto the holographic map. The ships were in position. Their cloaking devices were working flawlessly, rendering them invisible to the enemy sensors. The moment of truth had arrived. The commander's grip tightened around the arm of his seat, his heart pounding in anticipation. "Are all systems go?" the commander asked, his voice steady but filled with a hint of excitement. "Yes, sir," replied the lead technician. "Weapons are online. Drones are prepped and waiting for the signal." The commander nodded, his eyes never leaving the screen. The fleet's AI systems had been reawakened, and with them, humanity's most advanced weapon systems. The Galactic Council would never know what hit them. "Launch," the commander ordered. The fleet sprang into action. The enormous ships, cloaked in their high-tech shields, silently moved through the black void of space, slipping past enemy detection systems without a trace. Each ship, a towering behemoth of destruction, held powerful energy beams and missile systems capable of devastating the largest fleets in the galaxy. As the ships glided toward the Council's flagship, their weapons systems powered up, their energy cores humming with an ominous glow. Then, in an instant, the silence of space was shattered. The cloaking devices flickered off, and the ships decloaked in perfect unison. The enemy fleet, stationed in a defensive formation around the flagship, was caught completely off guard. The massive Earth fleet unleashed its fury. Energy beams shot out from the ships, lighting up the dark expanse of space. The beams cut through enemy ships with surgical precision, tearing through shields and hulls, causing massive explosions that sent pieces of debris floating in every direction. It was chaos. Blinding flashes of light, the soundless eruptions of ships being torn apart, and the relentless advance of Earth's fleet. Humanity's drones, AI-powered and swift, darted through the battle, weaving between the wreckage of destroyed ships. They were smaller, more agile, and equipped with powerful disabling weapons that sent enemy ships into chaos. The drones disabled weapons systems, jammed communications, and crippled engines, leaving the Galactic Council's forces defenseless. The space battle was nothing short of a spectacle. Energy beams slicing through the darkness, missiles streaking across the void, and pieces of ships disintegrating into space dust. The visual impact of the battle was overwhelming. The dazzling energy blasts illuminated the battlefield, creating a kaleidoscope of colors against the black backdrop of space. Ships exploded in spectacular fashion, sending debris and wreckage tumbling through the void. Each explosion created a ripple effect, as the shockwaves from the blasts caused smaller ships and drones to be flung in all directions. The battlefield was alive with action, the silence of space, now filled with the chaos of war. As the battle raged on, the young commander watched from his ship's command deck, his face set in a mask of determination. He knew this was just the beginning. The Galactic Council would fight back, but they were no match for the raw power of Earth's ancient fleet. The tables had turned. Humanity was no longer the underdog. Now, they were the ones with the strength to crush their oppressors. But amidst the violence and destruction, a moment of humanity's compassion emerged. As the flagship of the Galactic Council was ripped apart, a group of alien slaves, held captive by the Council, were seen floating in the wreckage. Their transport ship had been destroyed in the chaos, and they were now stranded in the void of space. The commander's heart skipped a beat as he saw them. Without hesitation, he gave the order: deploy rescue drones. Save them. The drones, equipped with life support systems, darted through the battlefield, weaving around exploding ships and debris to reach the stranded aliens. They carefully collected the slaves, pulling them aboard the Earth fleet's ships. The sight of these former captives being saved, despite the chaos of the battle, struck a chord with the commander. It was a symbol of everything humanity stood for: compassion, even in the face of war. As the last of the slaves were brought aboard, the commander allowed himself a brief moment of relief. They had saved lives in the midst of battle, but there was no time to rest. The fight wasn't over yet. The Galactic Council's flagship was still intact, though severely damaged, and its remaining forces were regrouping for a counterattack. The commander took a deep breath and refocused. Push forward. We finish this today. The fleet surged forward, relentlessly attacking the remaining forces of the Galactic Council. The battle had become a one-sided affair. Earth's ancient fleet, with its superior technology and battle-hardened crews, tore through the Council's defenses. The enemy ships, battered and broken, were no match for the sheer might of humanity's power. The young commander knew that the tide of the war had turned in their favor, but the fight was far from over. As the final strike was delivered, the Council's flagship exploded in a massive burst of light. The shockwave rippled through space, sending debris in all directions. The Galactic Council had been dealt a devastating blow, one they would not recover from easily. The Earth fleet had delivered the first blow, but this was only the beginning of a larger war. The commander stood in the command center, watching as the last of the enemy ships were destroyed. A sense of pride filled him, but he knew they weren't done yet. This was just the first strike, and with the ancient fleet behind them, humanity would continue to fight until the Galactic Council was nothing more than a memory. The victory that humanity had celebrated after their first strike was short-lived. The Galactic Council, though reeling from the surprise attack, quickly regrouped and began preparing a retaliation that would be as deadly as it was swift. The Council had underestimated humanity's hidden strength, but now they knew better. Their advanced warships, equipped with AI-controlled robots and state-of-the-art weapon systems, were about to descend upon Earth's fleet with a vengeance. The quiet of space was soon shattered once again, but this time it wasn't the sound of victory. It was the unmistakable hum of enemy ships, large and imposing, cloaked in darkness. The Earth fleet had barely begun to catch its breath when the first wave of the Galactic Council's counterattack struck. The vast expanse of space lit up with the brilliance of weapons fire. Orbital bombardments rained down from the Council's massive warships, sending shockwaves through the human fleet. The first wave of fire was intense and brutal, the energy beams hitting their targets with unrelenting force. The soundless explosions of human ships being ripped apart resonated through the hearts of those who watched from the command deck. Despite their overwhelming numbers, the humans didn't back down. They had learned from the first attack and were prepared for a fight. Yet the enemy's AI systems and advanced weapons were proving to be more difficult to counter than anticipated. The Galactic Council's ships were faster, more maneuverable, and their robots were programmed to think and react with precision. The odds were no longer in humanity's favor, and the underdog element was stronger than ever. The humans were fighting with everything they had, but they couldn't ignore the overwhelming power of the enemy. The battle intensified. Ships from both sides collided, energy beams streaking across the sky, tearing through anything that stood in their path. Space itself seemed to tremble as massive orbital bombardments shook the battlefield. Human ships, once cloaked and invisible, were now being forced into open combat, their cloaking devices failing to keep up with the enemy's rapid onslaught. Amidst the chaos, the real brutality of the battle became evident. Fast-paced dogfights broke out as smaller ships engaged in close-quarters combat, evading the wrath of enemy fire. The silence of space was replaced with the sharp crackle of energy blasts, the hum of engines in full throttle, and the gut-wrenching explosions of ships being torn apart. It was a battle for survival, with every human soldier fighting for their lives. In the heart of this deadly struggle was Bonner, a seasoned soldier in the human fleet. He had been part of the first wave of the ancient fleet's revival, and he knew that the Council would come for them. Bonner was no stranger to war. He had fought in countless skirmishes, but this was different. This was the moment where humanity's fate would be decided. As Bonner watched the enemy forces move in, his face hardened with determination. His ship was damaged, but it was still operational. His crew was losing men fast, but they kept fighting. The odds were stacked against them, but Bonner refused to surrender. He knew that they could not allow the Galactic Council to take Earth back to the dark days of oppression. The human fleet was holding their ground, but the Council's robots and AI systems were relentless. The robots, faceless, efficient killing machines, moved with precision, their energy weapons slicing through human ships, leaving little but wreckage behind. The AI-controlled warships flanked the humans, cutting off escape routes, forcing them into narrow corridors of space where they could not maneuver freely. It was a tactical nightmare, and it seemed as if Earth's fleet was slowly being suffocated by the superior technology of the Council. But Bonner knew the stakes. He couldn't just sit idly by. He made a split-second decision. His ship, though damaged, was still capable of making one final push. He ordered his crew to engage the enemy's core systems. If they could take out the Council's main fleet control, they might be able to turn the tide of the battle. Bonner and his crew charged into the heart of enemy territory, dodging energy blasts and weaving through the chaos. Their ship was battered and bruised, but they fought on. The moment came when they reached the enemy flagship, a massive ship hovering ominously at the center of the battle. They had to do it. They had to strike. With one final surge of power, Bonner's ship launched a devastating attack directly at the flagship's core. The energy beams tore through the Council's defenses, causing massive explosions that rocked the enemy ship. But in the process, Bonner's ship was critically damaged. The explosion sent shockwaves through their hull, and Bonner's final order was issued with his dying breath. "Save the others," he whispered to his crew. "This fight isn't over yet." As Bonner's ship exploded in a blinding flash of light, the rest of the human fleet rallied. The explosion from Bonner's attack had caused a chain reaction within the Council's flagship, damaging its central command systems. The humans had a chance. The remaining soldiers, fueled by the sacrifice of one of their own, fought with renewed vigor. Bonner's death had sparked something deep within them. They weren't just fighting for their survival now. They were fighting for each other, for their families, for Earth itself. The visual of Bonner's sacrifice, his ship burning up in a massive explosion, taking down the Council's flagship with it, stayed in the minds of every soldier. The camera cut to the human faces in the command centers, their eyes filled with tears, but also with a fire of resolve. They knew they had lost a hero, but they would carry on his legacy. The human fleet, battered and broken but not defeated, pushed forward with a new sense of purpose. Their counterattack had given them the upper hand. The battle wasn't over, but they had a fighting chance. As the ships continued to engage, the human fleet adapted. They fought smarter, with more determination. Every ship, every soldier, was pushing themselves to their limits. The Galactic Council's AI and robots were formidable, but they were not invincible. And the humans, with their courage and sheer willpower, would not give up until they had taken back their future. Bonner's sacrifice had lit the spark that would fuel the human fleet's final push, but the outcome of the war was still uncertain. Would Earth's fleet survive? Would the Galactic Council fall? The next few moments would decide it all. The final stand had come. The humans, battered and bruised, stood on the brink of what seemed like their last hope. The Galactic Council's forces were overwhelming, but Bonner's sacrifice had ignited a fire in the hearts of every soldier. They had seen their comrades fall, and they had felt the sting of loss. But now, it was their time to strike back with everything they had. With Bonner's death weighing heavily on their hearts, the surviving soldiers gathered. They had a single goal: to bring down the Galactic Council once and for all. The battle had raged for what seemed like an eternity, and now it was time for the humans to deliver the final blow. The Galactic Council had underestimated Earth, and it was time to prove that mistake could be their last. The human fleet, once scattered and struggling to stay afloat, was now unified, ready for the final assault. Their ships, cloaked and prepared for stealth, moved toward the Council's last stronghold. The massive enemy flagship was at the center of it all, surrounded by a fleet of AI-controlled warships and robots. But the humans were no longer afraid. They had learned how to fight back, and now they were going to take the fight to the heart of the enemy's power. The humans launched their final attack with everything they had. The fleet broke through the cold vacuum of space, moving silently and swiftly. Cloaked ships emerged from the shadows, firing energy blasts that hit the enemy ships with precision. The battle in space was fierce, with explosions lighting up the void as human ships clashed with the enemy forces. But this was not just an assault from the sky. Earth's soldiers were preparing for a ground attack too. On the flagship, human soldiers, wearing battle suits powered by their ancient technology, fought their way through the enemy's defenses. The Council's AI-controlled robots were formidable, their mechanical arms swinging with deadly force. But the humans were faster, smarter, and more determined. With explosives in hand, the human soldiers infiltrated key areas of the ship, planting charges that would cripple the Council's control systems. The tension was palpable as Earth's soldiers fought for their lives. The visuals were a chaotic mix of close-quarters combat and high-tech warfare. Human soldiers moved with precision, using their advanced technology to outsmart the Council's cold, unfeeling eye. They fought with the knowledge that every step brought them closer to victory or death. Each soldier's heart beat with a single thought: to avenge their fallen comrades and free Earth from the Council's iron grip. Meanwhile, in space, the battle raged on. The human fleet, now fully engaged, was pushing back the enemy warships, slowly but surely. The AI-controlled robots that had once seemed unstoppable were now malfunctioning. A few critical blows had taken out the Council's central command systems, and the robots' once perfect coordination was now riddled with glitches. The humans had found a weakness, and they were exploiting it with everything they had. As the humans pushed forward, the visuals were stunning. Cloaked ships emerged from the shadows, firing with deadly accuracy at the enemy's remaining warships. Explosions lit up the darkness of space as the enemy ships were torn apart. On the ground, human soldiers fought with all the rage and sorrow of those who had lost everything. The contrast between the cold, efficient AI of the Council and the fiery determination of Earth's soldiers was stark. The humans weren't just fighting with their weapons, they were fighting with their hearts. In the midst of the chaos, something shifted. The Galactic Council's AI system, once the backbone of their operations, began to break down. The human assault had triggered a chain reaction in the Council's technology, and now their once perfect machines were malfunctioning. The AI struggled to regain control, but it was too late. Earth's forces had already infiltrated the flagship's core systems, and the critical blow was about to be dealt. As the human soldiers planted their final explosives in the heart of the flagship, the countdown began. The ship shuddered as the charges were set, and for a brief moment, there was a sense of peace, a quiet before the storm. The surviving soldiers shared a look, a fleeting moment of understanding that they had avenged their fallen comrades. They had given everything to reach this point, and now, all they had to do was hold on for a few more seconds. Then, the flagship exploded. The shockwave rippled through space, a blinding flash of light that consumed everything in its path. The once mighty Galactic Council flagship was reduced to nothing but debris. The explosion was so powerful that it tore through the remaining enemy forces, sending warships and robots scattering in every direction. The final blow had been struck, and Earth had won. The battlefield was silent. The humans, battered and broken, floated in the aftermath of the explosion, their ships drifting amidst the wreckage of the once feared Galactic Council's fleet. The stars shone brightly above them, a reminder of the battle they had just fought and won. But victory didn't come without a cost. The human fleet had lost many soldiers, and Bonner's sacrifice would never be forgotten. His name would be etched in the history of humanity as the one who sparked the final stand. The soldiers who remained knew that the battle had been hard won, but they also knew that they had fought for something greater than themselves. They had fought for Earth. They had fought for freedom. The surviving soldiers took a moment to reflect on the battle they had just fought. They had won, but the scars of war would remain. But in that moment of peace, they knew that humanity had emerged victorious. The Galactic Council had fallen, and Earth was free once again. As the human fleet drifted through the wreckage of the enemy's fleet, there was no need for celebration. The victory was hard-earned, and the cost had been high. But Earth had proven that, even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity would never give up. They had struck the final blow, and now the stars would be theirs once more. The war was over, but the journey was far from complete. After the explosion that obliterated the Galactic Council's flagship and crippled their fleet, the galaxy was forever changed. The once feared Council, powerful and oppressive, now found itself in a position of surrender. They had underestimated humanity, and that mistake had cost them everything. The human forces, battered but unbroken, stood victorious. Earth's fleet, though scared from the battle, emerged as a symbol of humanity's resilience and strength. The Galactic Council's eye-controlled empire had crumbled, and the once powerful machines were now nothing more than broken technology floating aimlessly in space. The human soldiers, their faces etched with the pain of loss, knew that they had not just won a battle, they had won their freedom, and the future of countless others. The victory came at a cost, but it was a price humanity had been willing to pay. The Council's reign of terror had been ended, and with it, the fear that had gripped the galaxy for centuries. Earth, once a small and insignificant planet on the outskirts of space, had risen to become a power to be reckoned with. They were no longer the underdogs, no longer the forgotten species. Earth had proven that, when pushed to the limit, humans would fight, not just to survive, but to thrive. The camera zoomed in on the proud fleet, now joined by thousands of liberated alien ships. These ships, once captives of the Council, now flew alongside humanity's vessels, forming a new and powerful alliance. The once divided races of the galaxy have found common ground in their shared struggle for freedom. Together, they stood as a force greater than anything the Galactic Council had ever imagined. The scene shifted to Earth, where the first rays of the sun began to rise over the horizon. The planet, battered and bruised by years of war, was beginning to heal. The once scattered cities, now united in purpose, began to rebuild. The scars of battle were still visible, but there was a new sense of hope in the air. Humanity had shown that even in the darkest of times, they would rise. They were not just survivors, they were conquerors. In the heart of Earth's rebuilt capital, the young commander who had led the charge stood on a balcony overlooking the city. He had been a hero before the battle, but now he was a symbol of Earth's strength. His journey had been long, and the cost had been high. But the battle was over, and humanity had emerged victorious. He watched as the people below celebrated their victory. Families reunited, streets filled with laughter, and hope filled the air. But the commander knew that the fight wasn't truly over. The galaxy was vast, and there would always be threats on the horizon. The Galactic Council had been a powerful enemy, but there would be others. Still, he had seen the strength of humanity. He knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, Earth would always rise to meet them. As the commander stood there, a sense of peace washed over him. The sacrifice of his comrades, the battles they had fought, the losses they had endured, it had all led to this moment. Earth was free. The galaxy had been changed forever, and humanity had proven its place among the stars. The final shot pulled away from Earth, the camera moving upward, past the bustling cities, the ships soaring through the sky, and the vast expanse of space beyond. Earth's fleet remained in orbit, a symbol of their victory, while the sun continued to rise, casting its golden light on the planet below. "We're not just surviving." The commander's voice echoed in the distance, the words carrying a weight that resonated with the soldiers, the survivors, and the citizens of Earth. "We're thriving." The camera continued to pull away, moving further and further from Earth, showing the newly formed Galactic Alliance, with ships of all kinds now flying together in harmony. The stars glittered in the distance, each one a reminder of the battles fought and won, the lives lost, and the future now laid out before them. Humanity had proven that, even in the face of unimaginable odds, they would never back down. They would rise, rebuild, and thrive, not just for themselves, but for the future of the galaxy. The story of Earth's rise was far from over. This victory, this new beginning, was just the start. The galaxy would now know the strength of humanity, and there was no going back. The screen faded to black, leaving behind the lingering promise of a new era, one where Earth and its allies stood strong, united, and ready for whatever the future would bring. The battle had been hard, but humanity's place in the stars was now secured. And as the final words echoed in the silence, it was clear that Earth was no longer a forgotten world. It was the future. The future was now in their hands.